Want to welcome to the stage, I mean, just the three goats, you know. Let's start, I'm not sure what the order is supposed to be, but I will start with, of course, the great Steve Buschemi. Woo! Welcome to the stage, the great, the one and only Mr. David Chase. Woo! Of course, the amazing, incredible Mr. Terry Wood. Woo! Well, we'll just get right into it because I'm sure most people here are already immense fans of the show who know a lot about it. So I just want to kind of dive deep. I'll start with the one topic that you already brought up, David, the CGI. I wanted to ask, like, that, you know, Olivia passing was obviously not something you had intended when you started the show. I know from everything I've read, you had a whole arc for Tony's mother. And of course, you know, real life, cancer struck, you guys had to pivot, incredibly sad. You know, that moment is, you know, I'm sure talked a lot about in the writer's room as you guys were planning that episode. What made you decide that you wanted to go the CGI route and really have that interaction in that scene?
And they just had what's kind of something.
But I know, I mean, there's so many.
Go the CGI.
Well, there's so many ways you could have gone about it, like, you know, kind of just shot it in a wide, over, you know, over the shoulder, maybe off-screen dialogue. It could have talked about her as people. But for me, you know, watching it now, it was so interesting, even with the CGI that you brought up, that it's a final moment, and you know, it's interesting pairing it with Crime Barons, because even at the end of that episode, the shadow of her still is being cast, even by the end of the season. That interaction, I think, it's interesting with the CGI, you want to change it, but there's something very uncanny about it. It's almost like a happy accident with the, you know, bad CGI. It almost felt to me watching it today like almost David Lynchian, because they're like this like very uncanny valley of a woman who never quite gave Tony what he needed. And even her facial expression seems like a repetition of things that we've seen before. You know, what is making you decide that you want to update the CGI? Is it just, has it pained you this long?
I didn't decide it. HBO said they're just doing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, there's new technology now, which I don't think I understand. So they're but they couldn't get it ready.
Well, at the time, you remember, we were told that they'd done this technology in Gladiator with Oliver Reed, and they showed it to you. I remember you were like, wow, this is great. And so I think you went into it fully expecting that it would be perfect.
Yeah.
So I think it was surprising. Less than that.
Oh, why it turned out this way?
No, so, yeah, you know, there was never any consideration, there's never any reason to think about doing it in a wide shot, because we fully expected this was going to work like gangbusters.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I just felt we needed close-up at some point, and we know the extra who was in the chair, she did a very good job.
That's running very convincing, and she's here tonight.
Now that we got the CGI out of the way, you know, watching these episodes tonight, it just really struck me. You guys really changed television with the way you kind of jump around in tone, the pacing of the show. I mean, the first episode that we watched tonight, there's so many long stretches where the audience is sort of left to project their own feelings onto what they're watching. You know, and there's so much of television, it's so cutty, and you're having to constantly keep moving. Was that a conscientious choice for you guys as you were shooting and editing that, hey, like I want to leave room here for things to breathe? And what is your sort of intention behind even allowing us to watch Tony watch a movie? Like that, you know, was that hard to convince HBO of? But it's just so poignant because we as viewers, there's a moment where you start to kind of get uncomfortable, but then you push past it and you're projecting your own feelings and emotions and interpretations onto the screen. And I don't think too many people have done that before.
Mike, I didn't really do anything with the editing other than sure you want, so I think that's your question.
Well, this question.
Well, I mean, I feel like you leave so much
Yeah.
to
That was the big thing for me. When
Yeah.
I realized it could go slowly, but I was, on HBO now, there were no commercials, I don't need commercials obviously, but that the pace could be different. That was the best thing. It was the best thing that it could go slowly and it could speed up. That was the best thing.
I mean, it's throughout the season too, even with the finale of the show, you seem to love to leave things for us, you know. There's like this term in art history called beholder share, but they use that to describe like great art, where, you know, like an art from Bed Bath & Beyond has no beholder share, because it's just like, hey, this is a beach. So the eye of the beholder doesn't have to interpret it at all. Whereas like something like Mona Lisa, so much is left to the eye of the beholder because you're like, why is she smiling like that? Why is she looking at me? Why is this making me feel a certain way? Is that something that, like, you know, and then I think it goes the other way sometimes where people do that too much and then you're kind of like, I just feel like I'm watching jazz. It's a shallow moment. But, you guys do such a great job balancing that. There's always like a treacle cutter, or like right when you think like it's getting a little too long, you guys cut it with a joke. Is tone something that you guys discuss a lot? And Steve, I know like as a director, the hardest thing is trying to interpret tone from a page. Is that just something you talk about in prep, or you guys just seem to have it inherently? There's almost like a unspoken way that you all know the same tone.
I mean, they have, you know, tone meetings, and we talk about this a lot, and which is really helpful. It was so helpful to me as a director, coming in and, you know, wanting to get it right and wanting to understand everything. You know, when I read the script, you know, it was just such a, you know, it was so funny. So many levels to it, so many of the relationships in it. People tend to remember, you know, the two wonderful guys that are, you know, in the woods and can't get out, but there's the other stories that happen with it too that I also love. And so there was so much going on. And I remember we really talked about every aspect of, you know, like every scene.
It's funny, I was struck, just a little thing that popped out at me when Tony Sirico and Paul and Christopher are at the gas station and he's pumping the gas. Christopher says they didn't have lunch, and Tony Sirico says, you ain't eating breakfast, right? He says, the most important meal of the day. And I remember Tony calling me and saying, am I being sarcastic or am I sincere? And I was like, well, that's a great question. I said, no, I think Paulie really does think breakfast. And just giving me that information, literally every little detail. Nothing was left to chance. That's sort of what the thought meeting was for. We go through the script page by page and talk about what's happening here. Is this a joke? This could be funny. This is not meant to be funny, but it probably will be anyway, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we were all on the same page by the time we went off to shoot it, and then inevitably we forget half what we said. It's only, but
I mean, hearing it in this room, are you guys sometimes surprised at where jokes are landing? Like, because I feel like it's just nonstop laughter in this room. There's so many tiny behavioral things, even the way someone looks at something. gets a laugh from us. I mean, that must have, did all of that come about in the phone meeting? Like, was all of that very, very intentional, or are you surprised?
You know, a lot of that stuff came from, I think, the more people got to know the characters, the more you would laugh. They wouldn't even have to do anything. There was one episode we were lucky enough to watch it at a premiere at Radio City Music Hall, and Uncle Junior just walked in the room and apropos of nothing just said, "What a fucking head." Fireplace just cracks up. You don't even know what he's talking about, but you know him so well and he's such a curmudgeon that you just know what he's thinking. So I think we, as seasons progressed, we benefited a lot from the people knowing the incredible characters David created and knowing what they were thinking before they even said anything.
And the actors, you know, always, they're so committed to their, you know, characters. I was getting cold watching them. You know? They're just so good at, you know, what they do. And I think that just really goes a long way. But I think that also speaks to the great writing on the show. It's just, the writing on the show is just incredible.
I said before, just recently, that cast was, that's the best experience I've ever had. Not just being an actor, I mean, that was just a highlight of like the cast.
Yeah, we used to say to each other, there's literally not anything we've ever asked of anybody on this show, cast-wise, that we never had to write around anybody. Sometimes on shows you go, well, I don't know if so-and-so can pull this off. Every single one of these people, down to the smallest roles, delivered anything we ever asked them to in ways we could, beyond anything we could have imagined. It was really incredible.
And, I mean, the Pine Barrens episode, as I understand it, notoriously almost didn't happen. I think it came from Tim Van Patten's dream, right?
Yeah.
And he came in and he was like, this stupid story. And Terry, was it you that was like, if you don't pitch it, I'm
And
gonna...
he didn't even want to pitch it to David. I was sitting with Todd Kessler, one of our other writers, and we were batting around ideas, and Tim Van Patten, who was directing something else, walked in and said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "We talk about stories." He said, "I have an idea, but it's really stupid." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I had a dream that Paulie and Kristen got lost in the woods and trying to kill somebody." I said, "That's nonsense. Well, it's great. Go tell David." And who was in his office? He said, "No, I'm shy." I said, "If you don't, I'm going in there." So I knocked on the door. I said, "You got to do this." I said, "Tim has." And immediately David said, "Oh my God, that's great." And we were doing season 2 at the time. David said, "Oh, we'll do it in season 3." And then season 3 came along and we resurrected that idea. And it was the 11th episode of the season.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
And yeah, so I wrote it, and Steve was booked to direct whatever the 11th episode was going to be. We had no idea that's what it was going to end up being. So that was just a completely happy accident. And then that's how I met Steve for the first time.
How different was the dream from what we saw this now?
That's all he told me. They took somebody into the woods to kill him, and they got lost. And that was enough. I was like, "Oh, I see the whole thing." You know, and we just took it from there.
And in terms of David bringing Steve in, I know you're a massive fan of his 1996 film, Trees Lounge. You know what? Yes. And I mean, just watching it now, Steve, I love just, there's so much camera movement, there's a lot of long takes, and what I noticed is there's a lot that plays in 2 shots as well. It's so great because you don't cut as often. It leaves you like in the moment even more. Even in the car, I feel like most people would have like a 2-shot in overs, but then you have like a profile 2-shot and rack to Polly instead. All these little decisions, was it the nature of Pine Barrens that made you want to like adjust to that, or was this just something that you and David talked about in terms of bringing your style into the Sopranos?
Well, first of all, Phil Abraham, who was the DP, and he's since become a director, I depended on him so much, I'm often inarticulate when it comes to expressing, any kind of vision. But I like to talk about the characters a lot, and I like to, I just would imagine things in my head, and just Phil would figure out, the best way to shoot it. But I really, this whole episode is, like I said, it's all these relationships. So I just thought it was important to see them, you know, in the same frame as much as we can. And just for some of the humor in it, you know, when he says, "You're not gonna believe this, he killed 16 chickens." I really wanted to see them, you know, like, not side by side, but I just wanted to feel them both in the frame. So there are things like that, that just, you know, I tend to think as an audience member, you know, like, what do I wanna see? But yeah, Phil, it was just, you know, he was so helpful. And I have to say, I am so lucky and grateful that this episode fell to me, because any one of the directors who directed on Sopranos, Tim Van Patten, Alan Taylor is here, directed great episodes. John Alan Colder, you know, he was the view of the, I just thought all the directors, I think The Sopranos is when I would really start to, when I would watch TV, I would really pay attention to who the directors were, because I was just so impressed. So I'm just so grateful that this episode came to me.
Me too. This is such a digression, but I just felt compelled to tell this ridiculous story as I wanted to do. We would spend hours and days on end in the scouting, you know, looking for locations. And every show you do, whenever you have a location, the nail salon, you drive around New Jersey with the director and cinematographer and you know, the production designer, you look for location. So it was Christmas time, we were in a van for like a week on end. We looked at a bunch of different wooded areas. You probably never even remember this, but I get really impatient and bored. And I just got him in there anyway. We were in one wooded area, and I found this stick that was like a tree branch that was sort of in the shape of a giraffe. So it had like a giraffe head with ears and a long neck. And I started carrying it around in the van. So I was sitting in the row behind you and Phil Abraham, and it was sort of like became like almost like a ventriloquist on so I had like a giraffe head next to me, and you and Phil would be talking, and I would like turn, and the giraffe would turn and look at you. And Phil would say something, and the giraffe would turn. And at one point, say something confusing, the giraffe would look at me, and I'd be like, I don't know. This went on for like a couple minutes, and at one point, Steve was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I was like, they're so punchy. It was going on for like days. I told this to Rachel recently.
But those scouts are like
Brutal.
and it was so hard to find this location.
Yeah. And we found one location that we lost.
We lost because it was a local politician. You know, he got offended by, you know,
Well, it's
the
a
depiction of Italian American.
Well, it's a great punchline for that too. It was an Italian-American politician in Essex County, New Jersey, who found out the Sopranos was scouting their town to shoot there, and said he didn't want a show that depicted Italian-Americans as corrupt or gangsters shooting there. So he lost the location at the 11th hour, had to find a new location.
It was really serious. It was a real mess.
Yeah, it was a huge problem. We finally scrambled, found the actual location we used, and then a couple years later, that very politician was arrested for corruption.
And that was great. The other thing was, I mean, it was not good for snow.
Right.
You know, when we scouted that location, there was no snow, and then we had, I think it was over the Christmas break, right? We like, and then somebody said, you know, the forecast does say snow. And I was just like, well, if it does snow, I hope it's a lot, because we're gonna be there. It was scheduled for 4 days to shoot that.
Yeah, the last thing we said to each other before the holiday break was, okay, as long as it doesn't snow, we'll be fine. And we came back, and it was a blizzard, and then so I had to scramble and do a rewrite to accommodate, which wasn't a big deal, but David was very concerned, rightfully so. He said, why don't they just swallow their footprints? And I assured David that I could totally get lost, even with my footprints, no question about it. And he's like, all right, believe you, and so that was fine. So I didn't have a problem. Those guys got turned around.
Yeah, you know, Orson Welles said accidents are so like the whole process of making a film. You know, directing is all about control, and that snow thing is like, you know, a blessing.
It was a godsend, yeah.
Huge.
And
And
actually, when
there
there
was no TV those days, nobody was in the snow. I was a producer on Northern Exposure, they never were in the snow. Yeah, it's
When
crazy.
they're marching Valerie into the woods for the first time, and he's catching snowflakes on his tongue, that was the last of the snowfall. We started shooting it, that was the very last snowflakes, right after the first shot. And then we were out there for like 4 days. It was like a great class trip. We went up to Harriman State Park in near West Point, and we actually stayed on the grounds of West Point in the hotel. And it was really great too, because we could only shoot until the sun went down, which was like 4 p.m. So for us, it was incredible. We used to shoot till 10 at night, but by 4:30, everybody's in the hotel bar having drinks, except me. I had homework because I was rewriting episode 12. So I was like up in my room writing, and you guys went out and hearing out what a great time you had. That's very jealous. You sang, you were at a bar and you did like some Ramones shit.
I was singing, I want to be sedated.
I want to be sedated. You wanted to I was writing whatever episode 12 was, so.
I guess I'm sorry about Tony Sirico sending a PA to get pillows or something.
He did, and then I said, I want one too.
Yeah, I've done that bandwagon too. We all needed really thin pillows. And we all forgot our pillows and we had some PA go to a local Bloomingdale's or something.
Do you remember one of the biggest things was to convince Tony Sirico to mess up his hair? Ever, nobody could touch his hair.
That was a big negotiation. That was standing in the middle of the snow with Tony. We had the stuntman roll down the hill, and the stuntman's hair was all askew. So I thought, this is my shot. I said, Tony, you got to match the stuntman's hair. He said, what do you mean? You got to mess your hair up. And he's like, I don't do this. And he literally like just touched his hair. He said, no, the best way to get him to do something is tell me it's either you're going to be so scary or really funny. Because he was a great comedian. I said, Tony's going to be so fucking funny if people see you like this. And I, cocksucker. Take this song, go immediately before he changed his mind. And then he went with it. But the other thing was when he shaved his beard. Remember that incident, right?
What did he do?
Steve. I know you were there. So we shot out in the woods for 4 days, and then we moved inside the van. That was done on a stage in Queens at Sopranos Studios. So that was like a week later. So we told both actors, well, don't shave for a couple of days. It's got to match, what you had in the woods. It looks like you've been on. So Tony Sirico didn't shave for a couple of days, and Tony, as you probably know, is incredibly put together, always looked great. So he was also a bit of a hypochondriac. So one morning on stage, he came in and he's sitting next to me in his chair, and he has his pants undone, and he's going, and I'm ignoring him, I'm trying to mess with him. Finally, he's like, all right, I'll bite. What's the matter, Tony? All right? He goes, my doctor said I got diverticulitis, but I'm okay. Unbeknownst to Tony, our line producer, Henry Barnstein, is standing by and heard that. So Henry leaves. Comes back a few minutes later and goes, all right, everybody, excuse me, we're pulling the plug, we're shutting down. Tony, you need to go to a hospital right now. He said, what are you talking about? He goes, diverticulitis is apparently very serious, and, God forbid something happens and we lose our insurance. And suddenly he was a boy of card, I'm fine, no, I'm fine. I said, no, you gotta get checked out. So we got a car waiting, we're gonna take you across the river into Manhattan, you get checked out, you come back, no problem. Dude, all right, fine. So Tony goes into his restroom to change, he comes out, totally clean shaven. What the fuck would you do? I can't go out like this. My public, they say, because you don't have your car into the doctor's office. He goes down, goes into the doctor's office, there for 5 minutes, comes back, and then has to spend another 3 hours in the makeup chair to put the stuff up there. It's like a 7-hour diversion. But that was
Speaking of, you guys have brought up happy accidents a few times in this discussion. In the Pine Barrens episode, I think, if I heard correctly, the overhead shot of Christopher and Polly walking away was not necessarily, maybe something that you guys discussed. And David, you were surprised in the edit to see that in there because it sort of implied that
was another debate.
the Russian was in the woods.
We never talked about it.
Well, I just felt like we needed an overhead shot.
I remember saying, well, who's POV? It's a squirrel. Yeah. I said, you're telling me he's in the tree. He said, no, I said, well, who is it? This guy? And there was me and Phil in the woods. And we're like, well, let's get it also here. But I look at it now and I go, okay, obviously he's in the tree.
That's what I meant. I'm not good.
So I told you
It spawns so many, I feel like, fans to wonder of what's happened to the Russian.
Yeah.
And I think there's
David's favorite subject.
And I think that again, this sort of leaving things open to interpretation keeps coming back up. And I feel like, David, anytime I've asked you, whether it's socially or on stage, questions about how you write, you're very, very humble and you deflect. So I'm going to ask these two about your writing, if that's okay. David just has such a knack for, I feel like, everything I've heard about you guys as writers, from hearing real life stories and then somehow taking the kind of root of it and placing it on these characters and having it be both so funny and so poignant, but never too on the nose. Can you just talk us through that process? I mean, and Terry, you know, obviously come on and been so instrumental in the writing as well. Walk us through that process of someone tells a funny story in the room, something very relatable. How does that go from everyone you guys laughing about at the table to then it's on the board to then this incredible dialogue that, you know, everyone quotes even to this day?
You know, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, David would solicit stories. He wanted to hear stories. He would ask you things like, you know, what's the worst thing you've ever done to somebody in a relationship? How much time do you have? That London Bros at the back of the head was me in real life. That happened to me. I don't know why. Fighting with a girlfriend that ended with me saying, "You gonna fucking cook or not?" And I got a steak in the head. And actually, you know, I can't count how many dozens of things from my life or the other writer's life, and certainly from David's life, during the whole show, it came from that. But that was, I mean, that's the stuff. I'm always surprised to hear about other writers from where people don't talk about their personal lives because you go, well, this is what you make TV shows about. I mean, things that happen to you.
I think a lot of it was we didn't really want to confront, try to work out a story.
That's also true.
And finally you came up somehow and said, yeah, I remember this woman hit me with that mistake. Oh.
You do something with that, yeah. Right. Yeah, another one was my friend Joey, who was a landscaper, Mr. Season Beach Lamana here, and he's a landscaper in Brooklyn for like 10 years, and one day a guy came up to him and said, what are you doing? He said, what do you mean, I'm mowing a lawn? You can't mow lawns around here. This is my nephew's territory. And he's like, who's your nephew? And it started out some mobster, and you had to go and have a whole big sit down, and then ultimately, you know, mow some, end up settling it where he could continue to mow lawns if he had to mow some mob capo's lawn for free for the rest of his life. That became, you know, story in the show. So.
Also, if I could tell a story from Stevie Van Zant's book, he said when he first met you or was talking about the script and he was saying how much he loved it, and I think he said to you, the character of the mother, I mean, come on, it's a bit much.
For Italian mother, that's,
And he said, that was my mother, you know, and getting back to the episode that we watched that Tim Van Patten directed where the mother dies, to me, I was crying again. It's so poignant. The ending of Tony watching the movie where you know, the mother cared so much about her gangster son is just, it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I saw, that was my first gangster movie.
Yeah.
Okay. I was probably 9, 10, $1 million movie, and what I remember about it, that I thought it was like, I thought, oh, I'm seeing my father's, this took place when my father was a kid. And then at the end, when he, you know, that mummy thing, he falls to the camera, it's scary as I was terrified. I had nightmares, but I thought, wow, look, that's a movie, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I remember you were very reluctant to write this episode. When we found out Nancy died, we were all shocked. I mean, we knew she was ill, of course, but I don't think anybody expected that. And then we were like, all right, well, obviously we have to address this on the show, and it deserves an episode. And I remember saying, well, you know, obviously you have to write it. And you said, why do I have to write it? Well, it's your mother. It's based on your mother. And you're like, ah. And I think it was, I don't know, maybe tell me, I mean, the emotion of it, I think you knew you were in for an emotional ride writing an episode. And I don't know when the Public Enemy part of it came about.
I think it was during the writing.
Were we talking about it anyway? And you said, oh my God, this is such a great.
I think I had talked about that movie before, being, well, you know,
Right.
really informative movie, but
And then-
I think it was during the writing. I thought, oh,
Yeah,
And you know, that woman who played Cagney's mother was only 2 years older than him.
that's, yeah, really, it's a shame.
I love that she's singing. She's so happy that it's coming home. It's so.
Others just like that.
And then could you talk us through, you know, once you found out that, you know, this kind of main antagonist for Tony was going to be taken away from the show, how you sort of, I mean, season 3, I think for a lot of fans often comes up as a favorite season because I think there's so many new antagonists now that get brought in. You know, so almost, I don't know, placing Olivia, obviously Olivia casts a shadow for the whole show. You know, we see Ralphie that episode, you know, and we all know what happens there, and even Gloria becomes almost like a now proxy mother to Tony, with the same sort of mental issues that she had. Were you guys sort of worried at all about filling the shoes of Olivia, or was that kind of exciting, like, you know, again, happy accident, a breath of fresh air to, you know, try to search for other things that you necessarily weren't going to search for before?
I don't know.
No, I mean, I guess for most, I feel like, at least for me, that would happen on our writer's room. It would be a huge, like, L for us. We'd just be like, oh no, let's just shut it down because that was our plan and it's now gone. But it seems like you guys so quickly pivoted and found these new things. You know, was that a long process? Like, did that like slow the room down? It just feels like such a heavy thing to do a show. Yeah.
No, you know, I guess because she was very ill. She was in the hospital for a long time, so we saw her coming, not that we planned. But, no, it didn't take that long to, you know, see it. She was just so good, you know, yes. Right. That's what I mean when I say the cast is like, I don't mean my fellow writers and director, but, you know, that cast is just, I can't say enough about Annabelle Sherman. It's like, whoa, you know, really dangerous. Really dangerous.
Certainly throw a steak. That was actually Steve who did the money shot. You're the one who got it. Annabelle had, pardon the expression,
She
she
said
throws like a girl.
She says that she was the one that, I mean, we all took
She could be,
turns.
she could be,
She did,
nailed him.
prop guy, my
Okay, that's
phone.
it. All lining up at it, Jim.
It's about, I don't know, 15 feet away, 10 feet away.
Another thing that I think, I mean, the cast obviously very incredible, but also I think the words you give this cast. So something to be studied over and over again. You know, when I started the Beef Writers Room, I bought everyone a Sopranos session and sent to all my HODs and asked them to rewatch Sopranos before we started, because I think what you all do so incredibly is that the dialogue is never what someone's thinking or feeling. It's always either the opposite, and then there's subtext going on, or it's slightly adjacent, No one's ever just on the nose expressing their true emotions, which I think is so human. Like none of us really do that. And it's just profoundly affected, I think, so many writers that have come after. That sort of rubric of never quite saying how you feel, is that something that you guys just talked a lot about in your tone meetings, or is that something that's naturally in the writer's room that you guys discovered?
No, I don't think we ever talked about it, but for me, I didn't join the show until season 2, so I watched season 1 as a fan, and it was just so refreshing to hear dialogue the way people actually speak it, or to see characters who lie to each other, or misuse words, or they're just so human. Like somebody will tell a joke, and then 3 scenes later, somebody will tell the same joke as if they thought of it themselves. and like, oh my God, this is what people do, And you never see that on TV. And it's finally, I was like, God, what a again, what a breath of fresh air in terms of entertainment to actually, and then to be able to write it the way you actually say it. And it was challenging for the actors, I think, too, because so much of it is so non-linear. Usually it goes from A to B to C. This will go from A to J to L to B, back to C, in terms of the structure of an anecdote or whatever he's saying. So it was more of a challenge, I think, but ultimately paid off because it just felt so natural.
I always felt that we were lucky, but another blessing was that they were gangsters, but it wasn't just the gangsters, it was everyone. It was all bullshit. Nobody was ever about their emotions, about anything. It's just all horseshit. Or you have to look at every line and say, that's not exactly. And it was so much fun writing that. And easy.
I mean, to you. I guess, as we need to wrap things up, rewatching these episodes tonight, is there any sort of strong feeling that comes to you guys, whether it's a fond memory from shooting something or something that you haven't discussed before, something new that you're rediscovering as you're watching this? Because I know for me, I've just, I've seen these episodes so many times, but every time I pick up something new.
I mean, not to get maudlin, but it's all about the people who aren't with us anymore. Watching Jim and Thomas Rico, and, Nancy, and even a couple of people in our crew, Michael Casper, who's our first AD, and seeing those names up there, it's just sort of, just consider myself incredibly lucky and blessed to have known those people and worked with them and made something, that people are still here enjoying. So it's sad, but it's bittersweet. Sorry. And then all the fun we have.
Well, okay, so this Time Barons, my part of it at that time, it was one of 13 episodes. So, and the way episodic TV works is, you're writing the episode, you're coming up with the idea for the episode, it's 5 episodes away. And then the writing starts. At the same time, you're editing the episode that was just shot 2 weeks ago, and so there's all this stuff going on. So Pine Barrens, which I always thought was great, today it just blew me away. It's just the best fucking thing. Because it was part of, part of the whole job, So I loved it, and I mean, I took a lot of care with all of it, but you have to move on. Next one coming up, you have to edit that. It's all in the schedule. This was just directions. All I just thought, you're right.
Well, thank you. No, the writing for me was just, and I've told the story before, when I was reading the script, the only thing that was going through my mind was, don't fuck this up. Stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. This writing is so brilliant that, and the crew was just amazing. And I really felt like, in many ways, they carried me through. But it was such a pleasure to work with everybody on the show. And it was weird because I came into it late in the third season, and I was such a fan of the show. And my first day, shooting was with Jimmy. And I was so nervous because, I couldn't help it. Like everybody else, he was Tony Soprano to me. Everybody, anybody who ever met him, before they got to know him, I think was, they'd be a little, like nervous. I remember my son said he saw Jimmy at a pizza place once. He was with his friends, and he went, "Hey, Jimmy," because he had met him before, like when he was young. And he went, "Hey, Jimmy," and Jimmy turned to look at him like, "Why'd you call me?" Like the look on his face was like, "You don't know me." "Well, I'm Steve's son." I went, "Oh, hey, how are you?" He was so intimidating. I don't think he meant to be, but he was so, he was such a powerful figure. And every time I watch his work in the show, I just can't believe what he was able to do. He was just phenomenal. And like you said, it's really hard to think about all the ones that aren't with us, but we have their work. They'll always be with us.
And then, speaking for everyone, I can safely say you didn't fuck it up at all. And we have to wrap it up, but just truly, the work you guys have done, I know for myself, this show has gotten me through so many dark times. It means the world to me, it means the world to everybody here. Just thank you so much for all that you've given us, and you guys are the goats to me. So.
Before we wrap it up, I just want to give applause to my friend Sonny. So please, season 2.